Yo, what's up, everybody? Thanks again for joining us today on the eighth episode of Weed Jobs. Today, I am joined by Garrett from Greentank, and we're going to be talking about what he does for Greentank on the business development side. So, if you're into what's going on in the cannabis space as far as the careers are concerned, you come to the right place. Garrett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited. It was great to meet you in New York.
Yeah, man, that
But
was awesome.
yeah, no, it was great. So I'm excited to participate in this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks again, man. Yes, I met Garrett at the CBWC Expo, Cannabis Expo in New York, and that was in November. It was a great conference. There was a lot of vendors. There were a lot of panels. We learned about what's going on in the cannabis market in New York currently, and there were a lot of talks about what was happening in the cannabis industry for the future. So if you get a chance, check that out. Garrett, you work for Greentank. Could you tell us a little bit about your role there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Greentank, we're a vape hardware manufacturer. So anyone, I'm sure you have a lot of listeners who are into flower, but there's probably some that are into vaporized hardware. And we actually manufacture cartridges, 510 threaded batteries, and things like that nature. And then we sell them to grower processors or retailers. And my job at the company is I work as part of the sales team in the Northeast. So I'm always actively looking for new partners to work with Greentank, and then obviously try to get them interested in our product and lead them into clients.
Oh, that's really cool. How long have you been working with Greentank?
I just started actually back in March of 2021. So I'm not sure when this drops, but it's December 16th. So I've been here for about 9 months now. Formerly in a different space. I worked as a part of my family has a licensed grow in Canada. So I worked with them last year in terms of doing everything from planting to harvesting to curing. And now I landed with Greentank in the vaporization space, and it's been awesome. It's a great company.
That's really cool. I could hear a little bit of your Canadian twang coming in as you start talking a little more.
Yeah, they say it sounds like a Pennsylvania twang, but you can tell me better, given you're from PA.
Yeah, a little bit. But I have family in Toronto, so I've been going up there since I was a kid. And when I would come back after the summer, I would have it a little bit, and all my friends would be like, "Yo, what are you talking about?" I'm like, "What? Come on, man." But it's all cool. It's all good.
Yeah.
I love it up there, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. So that's awesome. Your family had a licensed grow. How long have they been running that business?
Yeah, so they were pretty new to it too. So I think it was about July 2020 is when they first got their license approved. So last year would have been their first full year going stem to stern in terms of planting, growing, harvesting, and it's a little bit different in Canada than it is in the United States. But they got approved to sell to a few different provinces in Canada, and now this year I went back up, even though I'm working with Greentank to help them with planting and harvest, and they have another great crop this year. So it's been pretty exciting.
Wow. So that means since they're growing it themselves and then selling it to the dispensaries, they're like fully integrated.
Yeah, well, they don't have their own store yet, but it's a little bit different. Like I said, in Canada, what you do is you effectively you sell, depending on province you're in / state, you would sell it basically to the state, and then the state sells it to the dispensary. So it's a bit of a like kind of a backwards way, I guess. Cannabis space, it's a new industry. Obviously it's changing all the time, and it will be changing in Ontario and in Canada, but that's the way it works is they grow the flower, you sell it to the state, and then the state sells it to each of the dispensaries.
Okay, that's kind of similar to alcohol in Pennsylvania. So
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the state distributes hard alcohol, and they call it the state store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same same type of thing sort of up here, but it's been great. It's like their flower is incredible. And quick plug, Green Man Acres, check it out.
Will do, man. I'll make sure
Be
I
sure
put
to
it in the
buy it.
description too.
Yeah, exactly. No, but
Did you
they
come
have
up with
some.
that name?
No, I didn't. The name actually, it was funny because I remember when they were coming up with the name. The reason it's called Green Man is my cousin. Her last name's Hay Green, and then the gentleman that she married, his last name's Mantra. So they just took Green and Man. But the consultant they were working with was saying, "Oh, there's too many green type of things in the industry," and they're like, "No, but it's our family name." So
Right.
they end up just sticking to it.
Yeah. Sometimes the universe aligns. You got to go with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So before you started working with your family in cannabis, was that your first foray into the business?
It was. Yeah. Obviously, I've been a flower user for, a lot of time, and I definitely see the benefits of it. But I was in a completely different space before that. I worked in commercial real estate as an agent in Toronto. So working in industrial real estate and working with manufacturing groups, transportation companies, office space to relocate them. So I was in a completely different space before this.
Okay. Were there any transferable skills you got from working in real estate to working in cannabis?
Yeah, a little bit. Like I think so. I'm on the sales end of the industry, and so obviously I had no problem with getting on the phone with groups, meeting new people. I think just the organization and the cold calling was something that was big in my former industry, and it's definitely helped me here.
Okay, so you're still on the phones, huh?
And even though everyone's digital, I'm old school. I like to get on the phones.
Gotcha. What was I guess the largest real estate deal you were a part of up there? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I was part of like a pretty big like portfolio sale at one point. I think it was 6 different properties across Canada, and they were totaling about like 25 million bucks. So
Wow.
it was a pretty complicated transaction. I wasn't the only one getting paid. I only got a piece of the pie, but yeah, that was probably the biggest deal.
Yeah, a lot of people can eat off of what? That's 150 million. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, I wish. Well, if it was enough that I could retire, I don't think I would be at Greentank right now. But yeah, it's great.
Right. So from Green Man to Green Tank, what was that transition like? What made you decide that it was time to spread your wings a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Like I said, I was obviously in real estate before. I was contemplating getting out of it anyway, and then COVID hit, where everything kind of ground to a halt, and that's how I ended up at my family's farm to help them growing. And honestly, I'll tell you right now, Chris, it sort of completely changed my mind in terms of what I wanted to do next, and I really wanted to get in the cannabis space. I think everyone can tell of like the huge opportunity there is here, just from a medical benefit standpoint for people. Reducing obviously the amount of people that are going to prison, but furthermore, just the business opportunity in it. So I loved it, and I wanted to be a sales rep for Green Man, but unfortunately, they were a first-year company, and they hadn't sold anything yet, so they couldn't really pay me. So that was okay. I obviously stay in touch with them all the time, and from there, I just started trying to reach out to people to try and find an opportunity in the cannabis space. And I actually, through my girlfriend's sister, she put me in touch with Greentank. I'd interviewed with other companies, but I just really like the vibe of them. We're a smaller group, but everyone's everyone's pretty committed to the cause and is excitable, and it's a fun company to be with, and I especially like working on the East Coast.
Gotcha. Where are you guys located?
We're located up here in Canada, as you can tell by the accent. We're in Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
But we have reps, all over. We have a couple great reps in California. We have one in Colorado. We have another rep in Florida, and then we have probably 4 in Canada. the most of our business was through Canadian licensed producers, but we expanded into the United States about 2 years ago, and it's been great. So we're obviously always looking to expand, and we're growing, and it's been great.
Oh, that's really cool. So, as you were saying earlier, Greentank produces products that work with vaporizers, so batteries, cartridges, and the actual conductors.
Yeah. So we're a true contract manufacturer. So we actually manufacture the 510 threaded batteries. We actually manufacture the cartridges, and we actually manufacture the disposables. And we have our own employees that work overseas in our manufacturing facilities. So none of it's third-party labor. Another kind of cool thing about Greentank is we received the first ever first ever certification in the world to test vaporized hardware specifically for cannabis. So we have our own actual lab in our office in Toronto where we actually test some of our clients' oils with our hardware.
Okay, so you're checking for like heavy metals and that sort of thing?
Yeah, like I think for our lab's more of on the performance of the hardware in terms of, maybe what size aperture you should use, what heating temperature you should use. So we're not really testing for heavy metals, but that being said, in our manufacturing facility, there is a very rigorous, quality control process to make sure that our hardware is very safe before it ever goes out the door. We have a less than 1% failure rate. And as it relates to heavy metals, we have a ton of labs that we work with across the states. Specifically in Michigan, there was a heavy metals issue about 2 years ago, and all of our hardware is very compliant and safe. And we obviously want to make sure that it is for the end consumer, and then obviously our clients who have those end consumers as their customers.
Gotcha. Okay, so yes, you mentioned a lot of interesting things and a lot of jargon I kind of want to touch back on.
Yeah.
For some of our listeners who might not know what that is. You said, so what exactly is your lab testing for? And who issued the license for your testing?
Yeah, so the license was issued by Canada Health, which is a federal. That'd be like on the U.S. side, sort of like the FDA maybe, but it's more on the pharma side. So they approved us to be able to test the hardware. In terms of like the specifics and dynamics of the testing, like I'd love to tell you, Chris, that I know what they're doing in there. I'm not a part of the lab operations team. I just know that what it's useful for, and unfortunately, due to in the United States, THC being federally not legal yet, we can't actually import from the States to test oil because it'd be crossing the Canadian-US border. That's illegal. But right. What we can do for clients in Canada and in Europe is we import basically their oil or their distillate or their live resin or their live rosin, which is basically the juice that goes in the reservoir. Okay. And then we'll put various different maybe the heating coil will increase the temperature or lower it, or maybe there's holes in here which are apertures, and you can get different sizes. So depending on the oil saturating this core, you can do different sizes, and you can also get different sizes for an intake hole. So we just try to make sure that at the end of the day, different customers have different formulations. And it's not really a one size fits all for cartridges. Some of them might perform better than others. So we sort of offer a service that helps us make sure that the hardware performs the best based on your specific unique formulation.
Gotcha. So if I was a distributor and I wanted your product, you could tell me, okay, based on what you're using, this product will go best with that.
Yeah.
So I would have the best vape on the shelf for what I'm selling.
Exactly. And I think so too, Chris. Like the way that we typically operate is, we think that the client ultimately, we can give them guidance, but the client ultimately is going to be the one, or the brand is going to ultimately be the one that's going to tell us which ones work best for their oils. So what we try to do is we try to send out a free sample pack, which I think I gave you one when we were at CWCD, which I hope
You
you got
did
too.
actually. It's beautiful.
There you go.
Check it
Yes,
out.
yeah.
I was
There you
like,
go.
I was so surprised and so thankful because I was not expecting this. You gave
There you
me
go.
this box was full. It had a bunch of like the mouthpieces.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had some cartridges in there.
yeah. There you go. The 1 mil.
Yeah, I had a couple. I mean, there's tons of these things, but I had these.
Yeah, there you
Are
go.
these
That's a
these are
free disposable.
reusable? These are
Exactly.
disposable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that thing, yeah, it's an all-in-one device. Yeah.
You did give me some like battery attachments too. So
Yeah.
yeah, this was great, man.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, what we'll do is we're gonna send that to clients, and then they can actually test out the hardware themselves, and they can figure out, you know what, this combination works best for us, and that's kind of the way that we like to work with groups.
Okay, gotcha. And so who is your main client, or like what? How would you describe your main client? Are they dispensaries or are they wholesalers?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm not too sure how much I can name names on our clients on this, but I can give you an
Yeah, we
idea.
don't need any names. No names
Yeah, yeah,
necessary.
no,
But
absolutely, absolutely. No. So we work with, obviously, like I said, retailers, processors, and growers. I think the groups that are, I'm not going to say the easiest to work with, but are maybe a little bit easier to work with are groups that are vertically integrated. So that means that they have their growing license, they have a processing license, and they have a retail license. So that would mean, they grow their own flower, they process it and turn it into a distillate or an oil or a resin. And then they have their own store where they sell it at. So that way we can sell them a battery, which is typically sold to just retailers. And then we can also sell them a cartridge for them to fill their own oils. So those are typically the groups that are most in line with us, but we're happy to speak with retailers or even just grower processors on their own as well.
okay. And what's your? I see you have a battery and a cartridge there. Is that your favorite product that you guys make?
Yeah, this is a pretty good one. Like I said, this is just the half-gram cart, but yeah, I like the duck bill, which is a kind of a flat tipped mouthpiece.
Okay.
Personally, but there's various different types. There's a barrel mouthpiece. Well, you can see them there in your sample pack. But yeah, and within this, obviously, this isn't our oil because we don't sell any oil. But this is from Good Supply up here in Canada, and it's a sativa blend, which is good for me.
Right. You can stay productive on that, right?
I gotta get pumped up for this interview, man.
Oh, well, listen, I appreciate you being on your toes. Could you tell us a little bit about the anatomy of that? So you mentioned that there's a duckbill mouthpiece, the cartridge.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess a little bit further. So there's that duckbill mouthpiece. This is actually a metal mouthpiece. Typically with cartridges, there's typically about three different materials that are used. There's metal or stainless steel. There's ceramic, and then there's plastic. The majority of materials you'll find in a mouthpiece we find is ceramic, just because it's cheaper than stainless steel for someone to buy, and it's a pretty soft touch. And then on the cartridge, this is made from glass. It's a reservoir, so that's what holds all the oil. In the inside there, you'll see that metal post. That's a stainless steel center post. And then on the back end, the reason it's called a 510 in terms of the battery and the cartridge is that it's just relating to the grooves here. So you can't quite see it, but it screws into the battery. And so what it means is 510, I don't know exactly, but there's 5 rungs in terms of a 10 threaded unit. As I understand it, it basically just means it can screw into the battery.
Gotcha.
And then the battery, like I said, there's various components. Ours is made from stainless steel. Within the inside, it has, I should know it, I think it's about 305 mAh, which is just the power output. The nice thing about this battery for Greentank is you can see this light. Oh, let me turn it on first.
Is that a 5 clicker?
You can see it's blue. So there's 3 different settings. If I can change the temperature. So now it's red. So that's the hottest setting. And then if I do it 3 more times, oh, wait, 2, 3, it goes to white. So we have basically within this battery, it'll produce either a high power, medium power, or low power. And it just depends on the amount of vapor or what type of flavor you want to get out of the cartridge.
Okay. So is that an industry standard, like the 5 clicks to turn it on and the 3 to change the colors? No.
Okay. There's different forms of batteries. Like we have another battery, which is just called the draw. So it's a breath actuated. So you literally just pull on the cart and the battery would activate. With ours, this is our push. So it has 3 different temperature settings, and those are the 2 batteries we have.
Okay. Now, Garrett, what's your day-to-day like as the business development guy for Greentank?
Yeah, no worries. So my day-to-day is basically I'll spend the majority of the day calling different groups that either have a cultivation site that has a number, or I'll call their retail stores and try to get a hold of the manager, or maybe the procurement, which just means the buyer works out of the store, and try to get them interested in speaking to us about our hardware, learn about their business, and then try to get them, like I said to you, a sample pack for them to review, and then ultimately setting calendar follow-ups for when I'm going to follow up with them next. So my day-to-day, it depends on what I kind of done the week before. The portion of the day will be checking to see which groups had received sample packs and then following up with them. And then from there, if I have groups kind of interested in discussing with us, maybe buying some hardware, I work with an account executive, which is kind of one rung above me, and I'll bring them into the fold and say, hey, Chris, who works in Pennsylvania, he wants to maybe buy some of our hardware. And then the account executive takes it over to try and close the deal, if you will. So then I just kind of move on to the next guy, and that's the way my day goes.
Okay. Now, if let's say there was Joe on the street and he wanted to buy some Greentank products, would he be allowed to buy them, or does he have to have some type of license to be able to buy your products?
Yeah, so you know what, we wouldn't turn down anyone from buying us. The difference with us is we're a business to business sales group, so we have certain minimum order quantities that people need to meet in order to buy from us. So, like, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to sell you, 10 carts or 10 batteries, it's not something that we do. We mainly focus on businesses just because we have to spend a lot of time and money to manufacture them. So we usually are going to work with groups that have a store, or at least have a brand, just because the minimum amount you need to purchase from us doesn't make sense for kind of just someone who just is looking to buy 1 or 2.
Okay. Would you be willing to share what the minimum buy would be, or how many units?
Yeah. So we have just sort of stock items where we can do a lower minimum order, like maybe around 1,500 units. As soon as people, like, another element to Greentank that I should mention is we can fully brand and add your colors and logos to anywhere on this device. So on the battery, we can have your company's colors and logos all over it. And then on the cartridge, we can do various different treatments to make this cartridge look different than someone else's. and for it to say your brand's name and all that type of stuff. So if you were doing something more custom, our minimum order quantity does go up to, I think, around 3,000 units. Again, it can vary depending on the situation, but typically unbranded stuff, like call it 1,500, and then for branded, call it 2,000, 2,500 units.
Okay. And about how much would that cost?
Yeah, so our carts, depending again how much customization you want to do, but without taking into factor the customizations or the shipping costs, like you're looking at like $1.75 to $2.25 a cartridge.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's not too bad.
Yeah. Come by Greentank, you know where to find me.
Right. So what would you say would someone that was going to work in the business development side of the cannabis space for a company that's growing like Greentank, what type of skills would they need to I guess excel in that role?
Yeah, for sure. I think, in any sort of typical business development role on the sales side of things, like I think it's important to know that, you're sort of you're lower down in the chain, right? But at the end of the day, the stuff that you do inevitably leads to potential business for the company. So I think the first thing is just don't be scared to reach out to people. Like people are gonna say no, people are gonna, maybe not follow up with you or whatever it may be, but just kind of continue to stay motivated and continue to call and continue to reach out to people on social media or through email, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Not everyone's going to buy from you. And I know a lot of people can get really down on themselves if they like hear no too much, but just understand it's not a reflection of you. Like you never know what someone's going through on their day. You're kind of calling them out of the blue and asking them a question that maybe they weren't prepared for. So I think one of the biggest things is just like be confident and also don't be afraid to hear no. Just like use that as motivation for your next call, because you'll get that next person on the phone and they'll end up buying from you. I think that's one of the key things. Another thing too is I think just kind of staying organized. It's one thing to reach out to a lot of people, but if you don't, put in a good system in place in terms of keeping track of who you've been reaching out to and when to follow up with them again, it can get a little bit stressful because you'll have too much stuff going on and you really don't have an action plan on how to turn it into potential business. So I think, just kind of staying committed and then also trying to stay organized is two things I can think of.
Oh, great, man. Are there any books that you've read that helped you in your career in sales or in the cannabis space that you would recommend to people watching and or listening?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, let me try to think. There's one. It's kind of a gimmicky book, but I thought it was kind of interesting. I remember I read it quite a few years ago. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it basically goes through 7 sort of traits that you can use and you can apply it across various different types of business in terms of, being successful. That's one I definitely would recommend.
Yeah, that's a great book. I keep it on the shelf.
You do? Good for you.
Yeah,
Good for you.
Yeah, I think I actually, wait, no. Here, just so you know, I'm not bullshit. Look at that.
There you go. Exactly.
We keep it real on this podcast.
There you go.
Yeah, but it's by Stephen R. Covey. That's his name.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good one. There's another one. I think it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a very short story. I don't know if you've read it before, but it's kind of cool. It talks about kind of like it's almost like socio behavior of people. It's a really short read. It's probably like 120 pages, but that one's pretty cool. And then I just read one recently. The name's escaping me. I think it's called Weed Man, but it's basically about this guy who started a very large cannabis corporation in Colorado about 15 years ago. And it was how he started out in a completely different, job. And he just kind of got into cannabis and he turned it into a very successful company. But I can't specifically remember the name, but that one's pretty relevant to I guess your listeners.
Thanks, man. That was a great list. I heard Richest Man in Babylon, but I want to make sure I get the name of that last book, and we'll put that in the description too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll shoot you an email after this so I can make sure it's right so you can tell everyone about it.
Thanks, man. Where can we find you and Greentank out there on the interwebs?
Absolutely, World Wide Web. So the company's called Greentank. So green like the color green, tank, TANK, and then it's actually technologies at the end. But you can find us on our website is Greentank Tech, which is tech.com. There you'll be able to find a ton of information about us. Same thing on social media on Instagram. It's at Greentank Tech. If you want to find me, I'm Garret _Greentank, which is GARET_Greentank on social media. And you can obviously find us on LinkedIn as well, Greentank Tech.
Well, thanks a lot, Garret. I really appreciate you joining us, representing and holding it down for Greentank and the the 6.
Nice.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. And this has been episode 8 of Weed Jobs. Thanks again. Like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to learn more about the cannabis industry.